We are talking MOMO, the Missouri Monster. This one is directed by Seth Breedlove, who also co-wrote this. Now, this is an interesting and unique film in a lot of ways, and harkens back to the days of 70s grindhouse drive-in movies. So the film is uniquely kind of told, and it's a cross between a kind of a movie narrative interspersed with documentarian sections of interviews and stuff. So this is based on a real legend. There's kind of an oxymoron in itself. So a reported legend in Missouri in the 70s, 1970s, of a kind of like Bigfoot style kind of creature that was reported amongst, you know, a few different kind of sightings, dubbed MOMO. It was kind of said to look a little different than kind of your garden variety kind of Bigfoot, and was purportedly maybe even an alien, as there was apparent UFO sightings in the area as well. So what the movie does here is it can present itself like it's a documentary, and actually shows footage from a quote-unquote lost 70s movie called MOMO, the Missouri Monster, that has never been seen before, but it of course is a real, you know, a recently made film, just done in the style of kind of maybe the 70s, interspersed with interviews with apparent town folk and stuff like this. And it all has this kind of, presenter who, called Lyle Blackburn, he's doing it like he does this kind of like a regular show. And the actual director has actually directed a number of kind of like cryptozoology style kind of documentaries prior to this, but this one, I believe at least, is the first one that has a kind of a narrative through line. So it's kind of a weird hybrid between a movie and a documentary in a way. The problem I have with it is I don't think it commits to either one, and you can't really take either one kind of seriously, because obviously it's kind of a foot in each kind of camp. So the basis of the story kind of follows in a narrative timeline, and we see footage from this, you know, supposedly lost film, but obviously this real kind of footage made to look like it's obviously a kind of a old grindhouse movie, showing various encounters of this particular creature, primarily focusing on this character called Edgar Harrison, who, you know, I think was a real person who has, you know, has had the real person at least had an, you know, the purported encounter. And it's kind of split up in kind of like, I don't know, 5 or 6 kind of chunks, interspersed with interviews with the townsfolk of Missouri. You know, older people kind of remembering in the 70s of the kind of the actual kind of case and things like this. So let's talk about what works first of all. So this film is very kind of unique, very kind of something which you're not quite sure what you're watching, you're not quite sure what's real and what isn't. So it does give this kind of feeling about, you know, a certain degree of, you know, unease really, because you're not quite sure, is this, you know, am I watching, is this kind of like a, you know, a documented case? Are these kind of real kind of people that they're interviewing? So you never know what you're actually kind of hearing is purely fiction, or obviously just kind of genuine people who are remembering. The actual filmed sections themselves do a passable job of looking like a 70s. I mean, there's added kind of film grain and stuff like that. They're using kind of time appropriate cars and technology and stuff like that. But at the same time, things like the haircuts and the kind of the fashion look a little bit too more modern, and you can just tell that the kind of like the film, the real film before the kind of the you know, the added kind of grain and things like that is a kind of a modern film, and the acting, to be honest with you, is quite poor. Now you can kind of get away with it. I feel what this film is trying to do is make a kind of a monster movie on a very little money, and hide the budget in the kind of the packaging of making it this kind of like this lost 70s film. So when you're watching it, you're kind of more forgiving of, you know, very limited special effects and kind of like cheesy acting and stuff like that, because you think, oh well, it's meant to be this kind of 70s film. But the fact of the matter is, these special effects are kind of cheesy, and the acting is pretty bad. However, I will say there are a couple of like UFO effect shots here that do look legitimately good. It's just our creature effects maybe kind of look a little bit, they look like a guy in camo, you know, like a sniper who's, you see kind of like military kind of videos and this like that. He's just got this like, all this camo kind of like gear on, and that's kind of what the monster looks like. I mean, I can't personally speak to what is purportedly real and what is not. I did do some research before doing this review, and there is legitimate, you know, accounts of this creature, and the names of the people that this film kind of plays are apparently the people who, you know, the characters that the actors are playing at least are the kind of based on the real people who reported sightings and things like this. So the film, although obviously fictionalized, is based on kind of real reported events, if that makes sense. So it's a uniquely interesting viewing experience, I would say. And if you are a fan, certainly of the kind of the 70s creature features, things like, you know, the creature of Boggy Creek and stuff like that, then this is a fantastic companion piece to go in with that. As a piece of narrative on its own, the thing I feel this movie maybe falls down on, I mean, because the actual purported lost film is completely new, and obviously even the host is not really a host of a real show. It's just made to look like it for this film. You don't know if you can take the actual interviews of the supposed real events seriously, because we know that so much of it is fictionalized and kind of like there is no lost 70s film. The host isn't really a host of this kind of like cryptozoology show. It's just made for this. So any elements that maybe were genuine and maybe were real accounts, you have to lump in with this kind of like this fictional narrative as well. And it, you know, it kind of works the other way. So you can't really take it as a kind of a documentary or as a kind of a film itself. It's this weird kind of like, immediately very kind of unique and therefore fairly interesting in its own right. But can you really watch it as a filmed narrative or as a documentary? Because it doesn't kind of quite fit into either of those. It's an unsettling kind of mix of the two. I've seen it described as a docudrama. And, you know, I've seen documentaries that have, like, dramatisations and things like that, but this is purporting like, oh, this was a real film that was kind of made, and it isn't. You know, and then obviously the host isn't a real host. He's just acting the part. As to the actual interviews, I don't know if they're actors and stuff. I don't know if they're actually real people from this town giving genuine accounts or whether they are actors. Who knows? But it's certainly an interesting and unique viewing experience, and therefore, in that respect, it's kind of maybe worth a watch. And like I've said, the actual the myth is based on purported real sightings of this particular kind of creature that I'd never heard of before, to be honest with you. So it's always kind of interesting, at least to learn some of the information that apparently, I mean, the information that it tells you is based on real accounts. So there is some kind of like some merit to the purported accounts, but you judge in your own mind whether you think it's just something that you can kind of get behind or not. For me, it was a interesting kind of experiment, I would say, that didn't completely work, because I don't think you can buy into it as either a documentary or a film. But I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.